get into, might as well get to this now. I do it, but as I get this video out, it's the weekend, so let's just get this into fruition as I have the Florida Panther jersey on my wall, because it is in fact, I wish a lot of people, a lot of like TV and they should have said, instead of like, they won the Stanley Cup championship. This year was pretty different. Florida Panthers, and the old wrestling term that Gen Z millennials now use, which is very, very, pretty much everybody uses, and it makes sense. It's the two biggest words, and still. And that's exactly what happened. I will get into pretty much a run through of the Stanley Cup, and there's a couple little knickknacks as well on this episode. First reaction. First of all, let's just give Florida credit. I picked the Oilers, and I literally picked the Oilers in 7 because I really, really thought that after everything of what Florida or what Edmonton did, I really thought this was the year. I mean, Pittsburgh lost to Detroit in 08. They went back, had the rematch in Pittsburgh, 1-7, and it almost felt like it was fate that Connor McDavid would finally get his championship and finally get his Stanley Cup, and Draisaitl and all those boys. And this sounded like it. They had to deal with the Kings for the 4th year in a row in the first round. And then they had to deal with the Mercenaries in Vegas, and then probably what was really, really impressive was they beat the Dallas Stars in 5, and that shocked everybody. So they had a legit, more than puncher's chance to take on Florida. And remember, if people remember older episodes, Florida turned the switch on in Game 3 and Game 4 of the Maple Leaf series, as they were down 2-0 in that series, and they flipped the switch and started playing bully hockey. And from that point on, they were a radical juggernaut. And I said in the last video, they're going to be a problem. The back check was crazy. That was insane. Forecheck was undeniable. They were causing less room. They were starting to show that in the Carolina series, and we know how good Carolina's offense can be. And Carolina had no answer except for one game where they won 3-0 on the road in a clinching game. So you got to give credit to not just Paul Maurice, but that's a well-run organization. They didn't manipulate the cap. It has nothing to do with state tax. Look at this roster they have a lot of decisions to make. But I was a little skeptical for Game 6 because I'm like, Edmonton could just steal this and go back to Edmonton in Game 7 and win it in front of the home. And Florida, just as soon as they stepped foot, around the 10-minute mark in the first period, punched them right in the mouth. Edmonton, if you were thinking, Edmonton had no shot, they lost 5-1, the game was actually rather close. Face-offs were kind of even, shots were even, but 2 turnovers, a very bad rebound, and it's 3-0. And Sam Reinhart absolutely went ham. Edmonton had no answer. They had no room to do anything. And also another thing, not that this is an excuse, there was only 2 calls in the entire game in the first period. There was not another call the entire rest of the game, and Edmonton can sit there and bark, and they're not wrong. There was a lot of stuff that got non-called the whole rest of the way. High sticks, holdings, obstructions, interferences. There was a lot of stuff that could have been called, and it never was. But Florida just made their life a living hell. That the rest of that entire game, to the point where the Oilers had to pull the goaltender with near 6 minutes left, and that theory got shut down real quick when Reinhart got a hat trick. They tried it again, they tried it again later, and they got a loose puck and slam dunked it, and then Reinhart gets another one. Reinhart's 4 goals is the first time somebody got a hat trick in a game clinching, in a cup clinching, or a series clinch since Mark Stone did it for Vegas a couple years ago against Florida. So Edmonton, there's a lot of, I don't want to make this long, so there's a lot of things needs to go over. Florida just has an unbelievable roster that had a role and did it to fruition to the highest extent. If it's bully hockey, very, very tight defense, and you still let your playmakers play. And that's exactly what the Matt Tkachuks did. Barkov, Ekbald, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, even when they got Brad Marchand in the trade deadline, they got Seth Jones in the trade deadline. They had an absolute, they had a field day in Game 5 and in Game 6. Bobrovsky had played fantastic. Florida just has everything written right now for a good dynasty. But you have to remember, Florida didn't win the division. So this team, as crazy as it is, they had to endure 7 with Edmonton last year, and then they just wiped the floor with them. Dog walked them in Game 5 and 6. I mean, there was an even series back and forth. I mean, if it wasn't for a couple non-calls in Game 2, and Brad Marchand doesn't go off in Game 2 and Game 4 with goals that made a big difference, we could be having Game 7 for Friday the 20th. I mean, go figure. But Florida just has this blueprint ready to go, and that is I say this is a problem for the rest of the Eastern Conference. I'm not gonna say anything in the league as far as the Western Conference, because I think the West is a little bit more loaded than the Eastern Conference, as I think the East is going to be dominated by 5 teams right now, and it's Florida, Tampa, Carolina. If Washington continues to play well, it's them, and if Toronto finds a way to get past that next nook, and barring what happens with their personnel and Tavares and Mitch Marner, we'll find out. That's what the offseason's for. But I don't see anybody else in the East competing at that level. Not even Jersey. If they get the Hughes brothers, they get the other Hughes brothers from Vancouver. Not even Jersey. Not Boston. Not Ottawa. Not yet. Detroit and Columbus are this close. But there's your top 5 in that conference, and Florida is going to have a cakewalk. I wouldn't say a cakewalk because it's 82 games. You're always going to have tough games with Tampa and Boston, and Buffalo is Buffalo, but if you don't take them lightly, they'll beat you on one night. Ottawa's now on the rise, and watch for Montreal. Those young kids in Montreal, don't sleep on them. And as far as Edmonton is concerned, losing Zach Hyman was a big problem. It was a big deal. But they do need to get younger, because they have a lot of veterans on that team with Jeff Skinner and Henrique, and go figure, they went and got a couple people. They went and got Janmark. They got Kapanen, and Kapanen had a big deal in that in the whole thing. They're probably going to lose a couple of these guys. They got to figure out about fixing Darnell Nurse's contract, what to do with the Evander Kane situation. I don't even know if he's going to be on the team next year, but the big thing is this is Connor McDavid's contract year coming up, and is he going to stay and think I can win a Stanley Cup in this city? And he'll probably stay, maybe get a Sidney Crosby deal. If not, he said, I got to do what's best for my family. And, it's kind of like we kind of hope he doesn't go anywhere. But this is where we know him. And I think that we don't want a Connor McDavid. If you're a true hockey fan, you really don't want to see Connor McDavid become a Dan Marino or Charles Barkley and be like one of the best of all, best in the entire league, best of your time, and never win a cup, never win a title. So we hope that doesn't come down to whatever. I was kind of sad because a Canadian team hasn't won a cup since '93. We think Bettman had something to do with it. I don't know. We were waiting for Bettman to retire, but he said, Alexander Barkov, let's do it again. Well, you can say what you want, put your things in. It's the bottom line is the Florida Panthers are officially a problem, and that's what I figure on the Stanley Cup this year. So congratulations to them. I'm officially sad because there's no hockey until late September, early October, when we get the training camp and preseason. The Penguins are going to be in a mass rebuild. So little knickknacks going around. I'm going to shut this one down. The Penguins have a mass rebuild coming up. The draft is coming up. St. Louis is getting an updated logo and getting new uniforms. I'll do a thing about that down the road. Utah Mammoth, we know they're coming. We know they're coming up. So let's get out of here. The Stanley Cup is over. Florida is and still your Stanley Cup champions.